Benjamin Moore has come to Westside Decorating Center. Good morning. Welcome to hour number 2 of the Art Lewis Show. Nice to have you with us on this Tuesday morning. We're going to talk to an author today, one whose books are fiction, but they revolve around Michigan locations, real and imagined. And I'll explain that to you in a bit. But we say good morning to Landon Beach. Good morning to you, Landon.
Hey, good morning, Art. It's great to be on your show and an honor to discuss my novels and their connection to Michigan and the Great Lakes, a region often overlooked in fiction. But I think your listeners will enjoy my books. And I'm a Michigander, and so Michigan and the Great Lakes have always been near and dear to my heart, sir, but it's a pleasure to be with you this morning.
Well, thank you. You know, it's interesting I mentioned real and imagined because in looking at the newest one, Huron Breeze, you talk about the Sunrise Side, which of course is real, but a town named Hempstead, which is not. So
Exactly. Yeah, I have two fictional towns that rotate throughout my novels, Hampstead, Michigan, and Shelter Harbor, Michigan. And I'm around from the Tawas area. My parents were both born and raised there. And so, you know, Tawas being a seaside town on the Sunrise side, right on Lake Huron, I went there every summer to stay with my grandparents and aunts and uncles and cousins. And it had a big influence on me. And so when I decided to start writing novels, I modeled a couple of my small towns on Tawas. But what's nice about doing that is you can put your buildings and anything else you need in the plot to service them. You're not tied to a specific place. So I've always said that, you know, if you're from Michigan, they'll have a very familiar feel. But I do have real locations, as you said.
Yeah. I noticed too in reading some of the press that some of your work, if people enjoy Patterson and Grisham, they'll enjoy your work. And I'm saying, well, that's pretty high praise.
Yeah, you know, all fiction is kind of related, and we all stand on the shoulders of, you know, authors that have come before us. And any kind of mention of my books with those two gentlemen is, you know, unexpected and welcomed. But I do think that if you're looking for a great yarn, a good thriller, or a good mystery, and you don't really see a lot of books set in Michigan around the Great Lakes, then you've come to the right place with my work.
The notion of your books, if I asked you to assign a genre to them, what would it be?
That's the thing. I'm kind of a jack of all trades, Art. I can give you a quick rundown, which is very simple, but I write in different genres to serve the plots. So with the Great Lakes Saga, my plan was to write one book centered on or around each Great Lake. And so The Wreck, which came out in 2018, is very much an action-adventure, sea adventure type of book, and it's on Lake Huron. The Sail, which came out a year later in 2019, is an action-adventure, sea adventure, and that's on Lake Superior. The Cabin came out in 2019 as well, but that's an espionage and political thriller set around Lake Ontario. And then Book 4, The Hike, came out in 2021, and that's an organized crime thriller. Think Breaking Bad meets The Godfather, and that's on Lake Erie. In terms of the final book in the Great Lakes Saga, The Bay, which I'm working on, that'll be an action-adventure, and that's on Lake Michigan. And then I've got a whole other series, which is, as you alluded to with Huron Breeze, the Sunrise Side Mystery Series. And that's more of a traditional murder mystery. And so you've got Huron Breeze, Book 1, Huron Nights, Book 2, and then a little bit of a departure, The Blue Hour Sanction, which I can talk about later. That's more of an action thriller. And then Huron Sunrise, which is the final book in the series, goes back to being a mystery. So, yeah.
So let me ask you this, Landon. I mean, have you always been a writer? Is it something you always wanted to do?
Absolutely. Ever since I was young enough to pick up the pen or pencil and start writing, I've loved creating stories.
That's been your career?
No, it has not been my career. I went to the United States Naval Academy right out of high school, and I became a surface warfare officer. And I served my 5-year commitment, and then I became a high school language arts teacher for 15 years. And as I was teaching and as I was in the Navy, too, I never really lost the itch to write. And so I started putting out some of my work, and it was well received and took off to the point where I'm able to do this full time now. So it's been a really good and unexpected gig.
And, the books themselves, where are they distributed?
So if you are an ebook reader, they are exclusively on Amazon for the Kindle. For paperback, they're on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, Target, Walmart, and there's a growing number of bookstores in Michigan that are finally starting to hear about my work. I mean, it's taken 7 years. The Wreck first came out in 2018, but it's starting to pick up, and now local bookstores are picking them up. And in terms of audiobooks, which is kind of crazy, Art, I mean, it was always sort of out there with books on CD and books on tape, but in the last 10 years, audiobooks have just exploded. In fact, they are the only part of the book business, believe it or not, that is still growing.
Yeah.
Hardcovers are down, paperbacks are down, even ebooks are down, but audiobooks have had double-digit growth for the past 10 years. And my audiobooks, I have a Hall of Fame audiobook narrator, Scott Brick, who's just an incredible talent and a wonderful friend. My audiobooks are wide, so everywhere where audiobooks are sold, you can listen to my novels.
It's interesting because Barnes & Noble reported their earnings from last year, I think it was, and they had a good year. They actually showed an increase. And I was happy to hear that because, to me, there's nothing like holding a piece of paper in your hands. And, I mean, I sit here on the radio every day, but yet when I go home, there's nothing like sitting down with a book in your hand. I understand audiobooks and all that, but I just, there's something about paper. Give me a piece of paper.
I'm with you 100%. In fact, I have a partnership with Thunder Bay Press in Michigan because when I grew up, going into the bookstore and, just the smell of books and getting a cup of coffee and, like you said, getting that, hardcover or paperback in your hand, it's important to me. And I think that bookstores are a vital part of our community. And so I partnered with Thunder Bay Press. And so any bookstores in Michigan can order my books through Thunder Bay Press to be able to have them actually in their stores because I believe in it so much. So I'm not just a Kindle guy or a paperback guy on Amazon or audiobooks. I really like to work with Michigan bookstores, and I've done book signings when I've been up in Michigan because I live in Florida now. But I am a Michigander, born and raised there. But I couldn't agree with you more. What we hear now of, I don't know if you've heard this, Art, but they're thinking of having actual ads in the middle of reading and listening experiences. And for me, as an artist, too, and someone that, when I'm escaping into a book, I'd like to be able to be in control of when I take my breaks. I was telling a friend, I said, it'd be kind of like sitting on a couch, reading a hardcover book, and a robot next to you reaching over and closing the book without your, your will and saying, you're going to watch an ad right now. I couldn't even imagine that. Well, I hope it doesn't go that way.
Well, I'll tell you how, if it does, this is my guess as to how it would go. See what you think of this. I want to buy the audiobook of Huron Breeze. I'm given two options. I can buy the one with advertising for X dollars, or I can buy the one without advertising for X plus dollars. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Kind of like how Netflix and
exactly,
and Amazon.
Exactly. Hang on, I got to take a break, and then we will be back to talk more about Huron Breeze, one of his books, Landon Beach, our guest, and we will return after these notes. First of all, let me ask how you slept last night, because, today we're asked to do more for less, so when we go to bed and we theoretically spend a third of our life there, you really need to get quality sleep. You can get it with a quality mattress from Sanitary Mattress. Now, you can visit all the so-called sleep stores, or you can rest assured your mattress is manufactured right here in the Great Lakes Bay region to your specifications. Your time in bed may be cut short by today's demanding world, but you can still get a quality good night's sleep on a Sanitary Mattress. They feature a 1-hour delivery window of your mattress to your home, so you don't have to wait around all day. And if you have an RV or a boat, Sanitary Mattress will customize a mattress for you to your exact size, something the box stores can't do. Visit the Sanitary Mattress Factory and Showroom, 5343 Janes Road in Saginaw, just east of the Harry Brown Airport. Visit them online at sanitarymattress.com or call them at 989-753-1757. Sanitary Mattress, serving the Great Lakes Bay region since 1935.
Woohoo! Unbelievable!
Talking to Landon Beach. He is an author with a series of books. He has books on the Great Lakes Saga, the Sunrise Side Mysteries, narrator, and we're talking about the Sunrise Side Mysteries today, in particular Huron Breeze. So, Landon, without giving away the plot, the end, if you will, tell us what Huron Breeze is about.
So, Huron Breeze is set in the mythical town of Hampstead, Michigan, located on Lake Huron. And the premise is the following. Think of your favorite author of all time, and let's say they're the best-selling author in the world. And you know that there was a planned 6-book series, and you read and love the first 3. And then all of a sudden, just when you're thinking book 4 is going to come out, that author disappears off the face of the earth.
Oops.
And for 10 years, no one knows where this author has been. And then all of a sudden, the reading world gets word that this author is going to come up with book 4 and finally finish the last 3 books in the series. And this author has ended up in Hampstead, Michigan. She's hiding. She's away from life. No one knows who she is. She's living on the beach. But the one thing that she's struggling with is the plot, what to do for book number 4. And at the same time, down the beach, it's late at night, a friend of hers is sitting by a bonfire enjoying a glass of wine, and all of a sudden, a person emerges from the water, stumbles onto the beach, and falls flat down next to her bonfire with a knife stuck in his back, and he's dead. And so what I imagined was this small town who relies on summer revenue, and I've been in Taos. I mean, you have all kinds of people that come to the state park,
Sure.
4th of July celebrations.
Yep.
You need those summer dollars. And so in Hampstead, you've got 2 things going on at once. You have this author who is finally coming out of being away from the world for 10 years to come up with the 4th novel. And at the same time, she's starved for an idea and doesn't know what to do. And there is a murder that has just happened, and it's threatening the very likelihood and livelihood of this small town. And so what she does is she decides to tag along with a legendary professional investigator. And that's kind of funny in Michigan. We're used to calling them private investigators, but for a PI in Michigan, they're actually called professional investigators. So she gets with a PI and she says, maybe I can tag along and not let him know who I am and see if this gives me my idea for the book. And then all hell breaks loose and it's murder and mayhem for 300 pages.
Perfect description. Perfect description.
And there it is, sir.
Now, is that similar to the format in the other Sunrise books?
So what it does is it sets us up with book 1, and then in book 2, Huron Nights, it's a continuation of the story, and it also goes deeper into this author's background and what happened in those 10 years. You know, why did she disappear? And there has also been another murder. It's a murder-suicide in Book 2 that this private investigator has to investigate, and she tags along again because she's trying to finish up Book 5. And then here's the little bit of a twist. To be able to write the parts of the book for this author who has writer's block and is trying to write this best-selling saga, I had to do a lot of background work to figure out, well, what was this 6-book fictional saga that she was working on, and who would be a main character that people would just flock to and read over and over. And so a crazy thing happened, Art, along the way. I actually said, you know what? What if I wrote a standalone novel that was the origin story of this author's greatest series? And so the fans would get the story within the story of how it happened.
Yeah.
And that became the Blue Hour Sanction. So if you're reading the books in order, it would be, of course, Huron Breeze, Huron Nights, but then you get the story within the story and the origin story of the character with the Blue Hour Sanction. And then to your point, the final book, we return to our two main characters, the author and the professional investigator, in Huron Sunrise, and it wraps up everything. She's wrapping up her 6th book in the series, and of course, she's on a mystery unlike anything else she's ever gone on, and that wraps everything up. So it's a 4-book series, but it has that little twist in Book 3, which the fans have really loved. They wanted to know. I got so many emails saying, well, who is this character that she wrote about? Can we find out anything about her? And so I said, you know what? It's worth a shot to write a book about it, and it's been really good.
Yeah. I have to ask, because when I sit down, particularly with a book like a murder mystery, when I get to the last page, I want to be satisfied that I've seen it all, heard it all, and the mystery was solved. I do get concerned when it's a series of books that maybe I'm going to get left hanging. Am I going to be left hanging at the end of Huron Breeze?
No, you are not. And I always did not like that either, where and authors have to be careful with this, because there are some who they don't really write a book. They just write a certain number of pages, try to make this little cliffhanger so that you'll buy the next book. I'm not a huge fan of that. I like to have a complete arc where there's a beginning, a middle, and an end.
Excellent.
And then, with Huron Nights, it's a whole new murder mystery, so it has nothing to do with the one from Book 1. So it's not a procedural where, there's not a ton of character development and you just kind of go through the motions. This is layered and textured, and you're going to get a lot of character development. But yes, you will end Huron Breeze knowing who performed the murder.
Then I can go to sleep. That's good.
Yeah, that's the whole point, right?
Yeah, that is the entire point of the whole thing. How, we have this Sunrise series, and you have the Lakes series, if you will, the Great Lakes Saga. How different are these books in style?
So stylistically, if you are a reader who likes murder mysteries, but you also like textured, layered characters that you care about, with the Sunrise Side Mystery, you're kind of getting 2 for 1. You get this author who is trying to develop her works, but also at the same time trying to solve a murder mystery. So it's kind of 2 for the price of 1. In terms of the Great Lakes Saga, they're all standalones, but I always like to say they do share some DNA where you'll see a familiar face, a familiar character from time to time. But I wrote those to be standalones because I'm a big fan of there are no hedges. Nothing is given away. Sometimes when you have like a 19 or a 20 book series, the reader knows, the main character really isn't in that much danger because they're going to be in the next 20 books. But what I did with the wreck, the sail, the cabin, and the hike is everything is on the table. There is no one guaranteed to survive, and you have to read from start to finish to go through that complete experience. The wreck, the sail, you'll get a little bit more of an action-adventure vibe, and the cabin is more of a thriller spy novel, and then you've got the organized crime thriller flavor in the hike. So you get different genres. So they'll feel different than the Sunrise Side because that's a mystery, and that has to survive. That you have to hit certain beats in a mystery for mystery fans to buy in.
Yeah.
But the others will feel very fast-paced, edge of your seat, suspense thriller, and hard to put down. So there's a little bit of a different flavor, but they're all set around Michigan, so you're going to get the Michigan Great Lakes flavor no matter what you read in those 8 books.
Yeah. All right, hang on. I got to take a break. I'll drag you through another segment here. We're talking to Landon Beach. He is an author of a series of books, a couple of series, the Great Lakes Saga, the Sunrise Side Mysteries that we're talking about today, and the book Huron Breeze. And we'll remind you again where you can pick up hard copies, soft copies, audio copies, all of that when we return.
It's the final episode of Ringside.
All right, we're back with you on the Art Lewis Show. We are talking to author Landon Beach, who writes a series of books revolving around Michigan, their mysteries and things of that nature. The Great Lakes Saga series, the Sunrise Side Mysteries, and we're talking about one of those today, Huron Breeze. Also a book I'm fascinated with called The Narrator, which seems to be outside of these series. So, Landon, what is The Narrator all about?
So, when I started working with my narrator, Scott Brick, I became fascinated with the art and science of audiobook narration because I literally was ignorant as an author and thought, oh my gosh, how hard can it be? You go into a little room in a booth and you sit and you read and people listen to it. But as I found out through a year and a half of research, it is anything but that. And as I started to think about narration, I've always wanted to I always wanted to tell an entertainment comeback story set in the entertainment world, but I never knew how to do it because so much had been done. You had Play Misty for Me, you had Misery, and I thought, well, how can I tell this? And then one day I thought, you know what? I don't think anyone has ever told a novel with an audiobook narrator as the main character set within the framework of a psychological thriller. And so I started thinking of ideas, and then one day I had it. And I thought, what if you had this audiobook narrator who was a performing arts prodigy and was a playwright? He's from Michigan, but he goes to Juilliard. He goes to Juilliard over in New York City, and he becomes a playwright and a 2-time Tony Award winner in his 20s. But then all of a sudden, his demons take hold of him, and like many of an entertainer, he has a fall from grace. And so he travels across country to Carmel by the Sea over in California, and he becomes an audiobook narrator. And as he starts to rise up the ranks and become more well-known, his demons start to come back. And then the catchline is this: until one day, 2 obsessed fans kidnap him because they want him to narrate their book, and it has an ellipses, ... or was he? And so what it does, Art, is it starts out very similar to kind of a Misery-like scenario where you have an author who is held against his will and made to write a new book in the series. But this one then takes a huge turn and twist, and it is more like Misery meets Gone Girl, and with a beautiful mind-like twists. And so, and the byproduct, too, that you get by listening to it is you'll learn about the audiobook world. And I've had a lot of fans write and say, gosh, I never knew what went into narrating a book, and I learned it while I'm going through this crazy psychological thriller to find out what happens to this audiobook narrator, Sean Frost, when he maybe gets kidnapped or maybe he doesn't. We'll have to find out.
So the number one question, did your narrator narrate this book?
He did. It was funny. it was around November of about 3 or 4 years ago, and I was having a Zoom call with him, and I said, Scott, do you mind if I ask you a few questions? And so he's like, sure. And so I started asking. I said, I'm thinking about this book. And as soon as he's like, well, great, what's it about? And I said, well, it's about a narrator that possibly gets kidnapped, and his eyes shot up and looked at me. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And so, as many times, in this business, you start projects or you stop them or it doesn't lead to anything. And so we got about halfway through that, and I think we were on question number 6 of 10. I had 10 questions for him because I wanted to make sure that it was authentic work. And the power went out, and we got our phone call, our Zoom call got cut off, and I was sitting here in the dark in my office at home, and I was like, what is Scott Brick thinking right now? And so we exchanged emails, and I said, hey, buddy, I'm going to work on this. And then I got hot and really in the zone, and I finished it maybe 4 months later. And I emailed him one day. I said, are you ready to take a look at Narrator, buddy? And he said, sure. And then it led to a fantastic collaboration and something, too, that was unexpected. You know how we have the Oscars, right?
Yeah.
Well, the audiobook world has their own version of it, and it's called The Audies. And for his work on Narrator, Scott was one of the 5 finalists for Best Male Narrator of the Year in 2023. We both traveled to New York City and to Pier 60, and we're at the red carpet and everything. I mean, again, things aren't just beyond this author's imagination, but it was really cool. And I still have authors who contact me and they say, you know what? I was maybe not so happy with what my narrator did with my novel, but then I listened to Narrator or I read it and I thought, wow, I'm so glad I did not contact them because I did not have the respect for what they do in the booth that I should have. So it's kind of had a nice little life that way as well. But if you're looking for a psychological thriller, again, Misery Meets Gone Girl with a beautiful mind like twists, Narrator is your book. And that's a standalone, you're right. It's completely different from the other 8 books.
Cool.
It stands on its own.
All right, let me take one more break here. We'll come back. I want to go back to Huron Breeze and tell everybody where these books are available again as we talk to Landon Beach. And we will return with our author after these notes.
Tax season is almost over.
All right, we're back with you on final segment with our guest author. He is Landon Beach, and his Sunrise Side series is led by a book called Huron Breeze. And I have a question for you, Landon. How do you come up with the names of some of your characters, like the Hampstead P.I., Obadiah Ben David? How do you come up with that?
It's funny. There are usually 2 camps when it comes to authors. And one camp is they think up the character and they write the whole book and they just kind of have a placeholder like Joe or Ben or something like that, or even a bunch of X's because they need to feel what the character does before they come up with the right name. And then you have the other camp, which I fall into, which when I'm thinking of characters and researching a book, I have to know the character's name first. It's very important because I'm going to live with them for months as I craft a novel. And so a long time ago in my writing career, in the early stages, I got a book called Character Names, and it is a fantastic resource because it goes into names from different countries, the top 10 names in the U.S. each year for a period of, many years. And then they have actually what the name means and the translation of it. And so when I come up with that, I think of who is this character and what would be the perfect name. that would suit them based on their background, their demographics, ethnicity, and where they came from, where their family's from, the history